Ramzan Kadyrov is Vladimir Putin's most powerful ally, an autocrat who rose to power in Chechnya before the age of 30. Ramzan is involved in numerous business ventures across Russia, and his personal net worth is estimated to run into the billions. He uses this wealth to finance an extravagant lifestyle that includes multiple luxury estates, private jets, luxury cars, and even a private zoo, all of which he displays openly on Instagram. Ramzan presents himself as a patron of sport, maintaining close relationships with elite UFC fighters, whom he hosts in Chechnya and rewards with lavish gifts. This is the image he wants the world to see. At the same time, he rules his republic through a feared private army, forces that have been linked to kidnappings, torture, and assassinations across borders, carrying out the Kremlin's dirty work. Ramzan's record of human rights abuses is staggering, ranging from sending gay men to makeshift concentration camps to openly threatening a child's life after the child insulted him during an Instagram livestream. In this documentary, we examine the rise to power of what may be one of the most brutal dictators of our time. Before Ramzan became president of Chechnya, power was held by his father, Akhmat Kadyrov. Over the course of his career, Akhmat served both as a religious authority within Chechen nationalism and as a Kremlin-installed power broker under Vladimir Putin. But before rising to power, Akhmat fought against Russian forces in the First Chechen War, defending Chechnya's independence. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia refused to recognize Chechnya as an independent state. The invasion was also motivated by an oil pipeline running through Chechnya, which was of strategic importance to Moscow. Despite this, Chechen rebels managed to halt the Russian advance, and the brutal war came to an end in 1996. Russian forces invaded Chechnya again in 1999, but this time Akhmat Kadyrov no longer fought on the Chechen side. Instead, he switched allegiances and allied himself with Russia. From the Kremlin's perspective, this was a perfect move. A local religious leader through whom the rebellion could be reframed as an internal Chechen conflict, while giving Moscow a loyal partner to govern the region. In the summer of 2000, Putin appointed Akhmat head of Chechnya's interim administration, effectively making him the Kremlin's man in Grozny. Years later, he was elevated to the presidency in elections that many observers considered to be heavily orchestrated by Moscow. At the same time, in the background, a son was growing up who one day wanted to rise to power just like his father. During this period, Ramzan Kadyrov led his father's security forces and militia network, an organization that would later become infamous under a single name, the Kadyrovtsi. Although Akhmat enjoyed the Kremlin's favor, the relationship was far from smooth sailing. Toward the end of his career, he issued unusually harsh criticism of Russian authorities following certain incidents, particularly cases in which legal proceedings involving Russian security forces ended in outcomes widely seen in Chechnya as humiliating. Reports suggest that serious tensions developed between Akhmat and the federal government before his death. On May 9, 2004, during Victory Day celebrations at a stadium in Grozny, a bomb exploded. Akhmat Kadyrov and more than 30 others were killed. Officially, responsibility was attributed to rebel leader Shamil Basayev, who claimed he had paid a $50,000 bounty for the attack. So why do so many people strongly doubt the official narrative and believe that Akhmat's own son, Ramzan, may have been involved? The visit to the Victory Day event was spontaneous, and some sources claim Akhmat did not even want to go to the stadium and had to be persuaded at the last minute. His movements were known only to a very small circle, most notably his head of security, who happened to be his son, Ramzan Kadyrov. Coincidentally, Ramzan was not accompanying his father that day. Instead, he was on an unofficial visit to Moscow, and no one has ever publicly explained the reason for that trip. The day after Akhmat's death, Putin met with Ramzan and offered him a path to power in Chechnya, on the condition that he swear loyalty to Moscow. The theory that Ramzan was involved in his father's assassination has gained broad support among the public, and it is difficult to deny that many known facts at least point toward his possible involvement. Adding another layer to the story are Ramzan's family dynamics. particularly the fate of his older brother. Ramzan is known as a devout Muslim who, during his rule, implemented elements of Islamic Sharia law, including bans on gambling and alcohol. But these values were in constant conflict with his brother Ramzan Kadyrov, who was widely known as a drunk. He was frequently in trouble and was even involved in an armed incident in which he shot a 23-year-old man. Ramzan became a major stain on the Kadyrov family's reputation. 3 weeks after Akhmat's death, the media was informed that Ramzan's older brother had also died. Ramzan passed away under unclear circumstances, and accounts of his death contradict one another. Some claim he collapsed in the courtyard, others say he died in his sleep. You may now be wondering why some suspect Ramzan's involvement in his brother's death as well. Ramzan was also responsible for his brother's security. The investigation was closed quickly, and very little information was ever released to the public. Whether it was an accident or a deliberate act, one thing was certain: there was now no one left standing in the way of Ramzan's rise to power. Ramzan quickly became the central force in Chechnya, even before he formally became the republic's leader. His final coronation came in 2007, when he reached the required age and replaced his predecessor at just 30 years old. His presidential election was strongly backed by Vladimir Putin's government, which financed the campaign. There was no real competition. Serious rivals were barred, and the campaign budget was massive. If this still hasn't convinced you how ruthless and dangerous Ramzan Kadyrov can be in his pursuit of power, there is only one thing left to say: this was just the beginning. Every Chechen has heard at least one story that perfectly captures how ordinary people view Ramzan Kadyrov. Early in Ramzan's rule, he had a very close advisor, a well-known strongman among the population, who was rumored to be planning to eventually overthrow Ramzan and take his place. These rumors reached Ramzan's ears, and soon afterward the advisor vanished under mysterious circumstances without any official explanation. Among the people, however, a darker rumor circulates that Ramzan fed the traitor to his pet lions. While the truth of this story can never be officially verified, the similar fates that followed others have, at the very least, made it seem disturbingly plausible. Perhaps the most recent case involves former UFC fighter Abdulkarim Edilov. Ramzan had always wanted his son to become a combat sports athlete. Together with his son Adam, he followed Edilov's fights closely and became convinced of his abilities. Ramzan asked him to train his son, a request Edilov accepted. Abdulkarim and Adam traveled together to boxing competitions, and a close bond formed between them. Edilov's commitment to looking after Ramzan's children earned him significant favor in Ramzan's eyes, and he was rewarded with lavish gifts such as luxury cars and expensive watches. Eventually, Ramzan promoted Abdulkarim to Deputy Prime Minister of Chechnya. In 2022, Abdulkarim and his longtime friend Murad Agmirzoev, who served as a bodyguard for the children and spent a great deal of time with them, were found dead around the same time. A Chechen source claims they were killed for turning a blind eye to Adam's alleged drug use, or for allegedly supplying him with drugs. According to these claims, Adam may have later been involved in a car accident in which innocent bystanders were struck as a result of his drug use. Although Edilov was part of Kadyrov's inner circle, he reportedly fell out of favor with the dictator several months before his death. After that, Edilov was never seen in public again. His personal Instagram account, previously filled with photos of Kadyrov and his children, was deleted. The official Chechen government website announced that the former UFC fighter had resigned from his post as deputy prime minister of his own free will. His death was reported 5 weeks later. Mansur Sadullayev, founder of the Sweden-based Chechen human rights organization Vayfond, argues that Kadyrov's silence should be seen as evidence of guilt. Of course, we believe that Kadyrov, or someone acting on his orders, killed Edilov, Sadullayev told The Guardian. We believe this because if Edilov had died in some other way, or if someone other than Kadyrov's supporters had killed him, Kadyrov himself would have been furious and would have publicly expressed his condolences. the Kadyrov case is not an exception. It fits a pattern that has repeated itself since the very beginning of Ramzan Kadyrov's rule. Reports suggest that between 1999 and 2017, approximately 3,000 people disappeared under mysterious circumstances in Chechnya. These cases raise the cost of defying Ramzan or refusing to comply with his will. It is not only you who are at risk, but your entire inner circle and your family as well. But what happens to those who decide to openly turn against Ramzan anyway? Umar Israilov was neither a warlord nor a political leader. He was an ordinary Chechen man who fought against Russian forces during the Second Chechen War until he was captured in 2003. He was held illegally in Kadyrov's home village of Tsenteroy, a place identified by multiple human rights organizations as an unofficial torture site. According to Israilov, he was tortured repeatedly, and not only by Kadyrov's men, but allegedly by Ramzan Kadyrov himself. He was beaten with rifle butts, kicked unconscious, and subjected to electric shocks. Subsequent medical examinations and eyewitness testimonies later corroborated his account. After the torture, Israilov was forced to serve in Kadyrov's security forces as one of his bodyguards. In this role, he said he witnessed systematic violence, extrajudicial executions, arbitrary detentions, and torture used not only against insurgents, but also against their families. These were not isolated crimes, but part of an efficient and organized machinery of violence. In 2004, Israilov fled Chechnya. He and his family eventually reached Austria, where he applied for asylum and made a decisive choice: to bring his torture allegations against Kadyrov before the European Court of Human Rights. This made him an exceptionally dangerous man in Ramzan's eyes. Pressure from Kadyrov soon followed. Members of Israilov's family who remained in Chechnya were detained without cause. Israilov himself began receiving threats, and in 2008, a man named Artur Kurmakajev contacted him, demanding that he withdraw his complaint and return to Chechnya. Kurmakajev said he was acting on Kadyrov's orders and warned that otherwise Israilov's family would suffer. These threats were reported at the time to Austrian authorities, but no protection was granted. In January 2009, Israilov once again informed Austrian police that he feared for his life. Days later, on January 13, 2009, he was shot in broad daylight on a street in Vienna. His wife was pregnant and his children were left without a father. The murder did not remain entirely in the shadows. Legal proceedings in Austria led to 3 men being sentenced to life imprisonment and long prison terms. The court concluded that the killing was a contract murder. Austrian police determined that Israilov's abduction had been ordered from Chechnya and that the operation originated from Ramzan Kadyrov's inner circle. However, the full chain of command was never completely uncovered. One detail makes the case particularly chilling. 4 days before the murder, the New York Times had approached the Russian government requesting comment on Israilov's torture allegations. No comment was given. A few days later, Israilov was dead. At this point, it should be clear how Ramzan Kadyrov deals with those who oppose him, and how effective and far-reaching his silencing apparatus truly is. And for that reason, Ramzan is not the only one who makes use of this machinery. There is demand for it from other powerful actors as well. Kadyrovtsi is the umbrella term used for Kadyrov's loyal security forces, paramilitary units and formations linked to the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the National Guard, that answer not so much to the Chechen government as they do directly to Kadyrov himself. Estimates of their size vary, but Kadyrov has personally claimed extraordinarily high numbers, up to 70,000 fully equipped fighters, which is a staggering figure given Chechnya's population of just 1.5 million. One of the most interesting aspects of the Kadyrovtsi is how they recruit. Throughout Chechen history, warriors have been highly respected, and that respect has never been limited to soldiers alone. Combat sports athletes also enjoy high social status in Chechnya. Under Ramzan's rule, mixed martial arts in particular has surged in popularity. Ramzan values MMA because it embodies his vision of the ideal Chechen man. This admiration is reflected in institutions such as Fight Club Akhmat. Ramzan pays the club's top fighters' salaries simply to train and rewards the most successful athletes with lavish gifts, including luxury cars. But the Fight Club is not used solely to produce future MMA stars. It serves other purposes as well. Thousands of young Chechen boys who train at the gym are directly recruited into the ranks of the Kadyrovtsi. In addition, several fighters who have competed in the UFC and achieved international success hold senior positions within this private army. Ramzan wants successful men, those he considers ideal Chechen role models, to serve as both public faces and loyal subordinates. Examples include the previously mentioned Abdul Karim Edilov, who served as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Sport. Abuzayed Vismuradov serves as a commander within the Kadyrovtsi and also leads Fight Club Akhmat. He has even been seen cornering fighters at UFC events. Another example is Beslan Ushukov, who operates as a special forces operative within the Kadyrovtsi. The task of this militarized force is to operate at Ramzan's command and carry out operations such as kidnappings, torture, and assassinations. As a result, the Kadyrovtsi have become the most feared organization among the Chechen civilian population, surpassing even Russian federal troops. The Kadyrovtsi entered global public awareness in a major way in 2017, when they were implicated in a large-scale anti-gay purge in Chechnya. At least 100 gay men were reportedly abducted and taken to what human rights organizations described as concentration camps. Perhaps the most well-known individual case from these purges involves Chechen singer Zelim Bakayev, who was living in Moscow at the time. He disappeared in August 2017 while visiting Grozny for his sister's wedding and was never seen again. According to eyewitnesses cited by local media, security forces detained him and his mobile phone was deactivated on the day he vanished. The singer's mother publicly appealed to Chechen President Ramzan Kadyrov, but Chechen authorities have refused to open an investigation into Bakayev's disappearance. Although the Kadyrovtsi formally answer only to Ramzan Kadyrov, his close alliance with Vladimir Putin makes one thing clear: the Kremlin also benefits from and makes use of this force for its own dirty work. Boris Nemtsov was one of Russia's most prominent opposition figures. In the 1990s, he served as deputy prime minister and later became one of Vladimir Putin's most outspoken critics. In his final years, Nemtsov focused on exposing corruption and openly opposed Russia's war in Ukraine. By February 2015, he was finalizing a report on Russia's military involvement in the Donbass and preparing to lead a large protest in Moscow. On the night of February 27, 2015, Nemtsov was shot dead while walking across the Bolshoi Moskvoretsky Bridge, just steps away from the walls of the Kremlin. An unknown gunman fired 7 or 8 shots, 4 of which struck Nemtsov and proved fatal. The murder took place in an exceptionally well-guarded area within sight of the symbolic center of Russian power. Nemtsov's companion, Ukrainian national Anna Duritskaya, was unharmed and became the only eyewitness to the killing. At the same time, surveillance cameras in the area were reportedly offline for maintenance, and the only available footage of the murder was partially blocked by a municipal service vehicle. The assassination immediately sparked international shock and raised serious questions about how such an act could occur in Russia's most heavily secured zone. An investigation was launched swiftly, and President Putin announced that he would personally oversee the case. Authorities arrested several suspects from the North Caucasus. The central figure became Tsar Dadyev, a former deputy commander of the Sever Battalion. The Sever Battalion is known as part of Kadyrov's loyal forces. Dadyev initially confessed to involvement in the murder, but later retracted his confession, claiming it had been extracted through torture and coercion. According to the official Russian narrative, the motive for the killing was Nemtsov's critical stance toward Islam and his support for the Charlie Hebdo cartoons. This explanation was widely viewed as implausible. Dadaev had previously fought Islamist groups, and according to his family, he was not particularly religious. The investigation also identified Ruslan Mukudanov as a suspected organizer and financier of the assassination. He was never apprehended and was believed to have fled Russia. Another figure linked to the case was Ruslan Geramev, a commander within the Sever battalion and a member of an influential family connected to Kadyrov's inner circle. Geramev appeared on surveillance footage from the night of the murder and subsequently left the country without facing any consequences. He was never brought to trial and was reportedly sheltered in Chechnya before departing abroad. In 2017, 5 Chechen men were sentenced to long prison terms for Nemtsov's murder. The court ruled that they had acted in exchange for financial reward. However, the individual who ordered the killing was never identified. This remains the most critical unanswered question in the case. Since the 2000s and 10s, the Kadyrovtsi have also participated in official military operations alongside the Russian army. They have operated both in Syria and in Ukraine. In 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Kadyrovtsi were assigned various tasks on Ukrainian territory. In the early phase of the war, their reported mission was to kidnap and assassinate Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukrainian authorities later stated that they had received intelligence about an elite Chechen unit being dispatched to kill Zelensky and that the unit was successfully neutralized. At the same time, elsewhere on the battlefield, Kadyrovtsi assisted Russian forces in advancing through Mariupol, Severodonetsk, and Lysychansk. As the war progressed, their role shifted increasingly toward rear area operations, including policing duties in occupied territories, during which they have been implicated in looting. The presence of Chechen fighters has been described as a psychological weapon used against Ukrainian forces due to their brutal reputation, and not without reason. They are also unpopular among regular Russian troops. More recently, reports have emerged that the Kadyrovtsi have been assigned a new role, torturing and executing unmotivated Russian soldiers and those accused of desertion from the front lines. But Kadyrovtsi are also employed by private interests that increasingly operate in Russia outside the boundaries of law and formal institutions. One of the most revealing examples of this involves Russian businessman Vladislav Bakalchuk, co-founder of the online retail giant Wildberries and one of the country's largest private entrepreneurs. Over 2 decades, Wildberries has grown into what is often described as Russia's Amazon. Founded in 2004 as a family business, the company's rapid rise, without visible political patrons, made it an anomaly in the Russian business landscape. For a long time, the Bakalchuks appeared to avoid what is known as Krisha, a powerful protector who, in Russia, often guarantees business stability in exchange for loyalty. That changed in 2024 when Wildberries became entangled simultaneously in an internal family dispute, increased pressure from authorities, and an unfavorable corporate restructuring. In the summer of 2024, the company announced a merger with a much smaller advertising firm, a deal many analysts considered economically irrational but politically protected. Information soon leaked to the public suggesting that the arrangement had Kremlin backing. At this point, Vladislav Bakalchuk made a decision that shocked those around him. In July 2024, he released a video in which he appeared alongside Ramzan Kadyrov. In the video, Kadyrov promised to protect Bakalchuk and to restore both his wife and his company to him. A few weeks later, in September 2024, Bakalchuk arrived at Wildberries' Moscow headquarters accompanied by Chechen martial artists and armed men. A violent confrontation erupted outside the building between Bakalchuk's group and security guards loyal to the company. 2 guards from Ingushetia were reportedly killed, dozens were injured, and police lost control of the situation. The incident took place only a short distance from the Kremlin walls. The official investigation focused on individual perpetrators, and Russia's top leadership refrained from publicly addressing the case. The president's press secretary stated that the Kremlin does not interfere in family or business disputes. At the same time, Kadyrov appeared on local television, threatening to declare a blood feud against Bakalchuk's business partners. In recent years, Ramzan Kadyrov's son, Adam Kadyrov, has begun to rise ever more visibly alongside his father. While still a minor, Adam has already been granted high-ranking roles and titles that in Russia are normally reserved for seasoned security officials. He has served within the Chechen president's security structures, participated in military ceremonies, and appeared publicly among armed units. Ramzan Kadyrov has deliberately built Adam into a public figure. From a young age, major combat sports stars have been brought into his orbit. Most notably, UFC star Khamzat Chimaev has recently spent considerable time with Adam and refers to him as a brother. Adam is also frequently seen in public driving expensive luxury cars and wearing watches worth as much as a mansion. Adam first entered broader public awareness in 2022 when a video surfaced showing him brutally beating a defenseless detained man. Adam had personally taken part in the arrest, which was carried out after the man was accused of publicly burning the Quran. The assault was filmed and shared openly. It did not lead to an investigation or punishment. Quite the opposite. Adam was rewarded, and his position was strengthened. The message was unmistakable. The apple does not fall far from the tree. In recent years, persistent rumors have circulated about Ramzan Kadyrov's health, accompanied by extended absences from public life. He is reportedly suffering from several serious conditions, including kidney failure. During these periods, Adam has increasingly filled the void. He has appeared at ceremonies, military events, and high-level meetings where previously only his father would have been present. It is now clear that Adam has been groomed for years to assume power after his father's death. His marriage further reinforced this trajectory. Adam married the granddaughter of Adam Delimkhanov, an extremely influential figure in Russia with close ties to the Kremlin, Russian security services, and the FSB. This family tie will secure his rear flank when he rises to power. When one considers everything laid out in this documentary, disappearances, fear, violence, and total impunity, it becomes difficult to imagine a different future. If Adam Kadyrov eventually takes power, it is unlikely that anything in Chechnya will truly change.